I feel like getting so little press and so little hype compared to what a big fight it is, which is Crawford versus Spence.
Well, I think I said before. Let me start off by saying, if you remember my last, I said the fight would not happen, right?
A lot of
And
us thought it was never going to happen.
yeah, I mean, I thought it would not happen, but along the way, I think both guys or someone in each other's camp realized that if we don't make this fight, I don't like the word legacy, because honestly, I don't think either one of them has what you call a legacy. Okay, I
Not
don't think.
yet. This could be
Not
the
yet. That's what I
start
mean.
of the
Yeah. If
legacy. Yeah, yeah.
after this fight here, there's a possibility that whoever wins goes on from here, could set the trend to say that Crawford or Spence was the best of the 147s in the last.
Hmm.
Because we're talking about a fight literally that's 5 years down the line too long, as far as I'm concerned. I was
Yeah.
I was watching the other day. I've been looking at some welterweight fights and doing some measuring, with guys. And I pulled up a fight with Harold Graham and Julian Jackson. And
Hmm.
this fight kind of reminds me of that. If you get a chance to, Harold Graham was a UK fighter.
Hmm.
And that's always, the UK guys tend to let you down, with the exception of the last few years. But they've always let their people down. But Harold Graham rather, was one of those guys that was supposed to have been there. And if you look at the fight, he was doing pretty much what everybody thought he could do, winning the fight against Julian Jackson. All
Hmm.
of a sudden, he stays too close, and they always tell you never follow a puncher or get too close to the puncher, because anything can happen. And
Jackson
that
especially, man. That guy, like, for those who don't know, look up a knockout reel. This guy had the most insane knockouts, like any angle, any tactic, any punch, he could just put you down
yes,
fast and you're not getting back
yes,
up.
and
Hmm.
and that's what happened. It was a fight that it was over with that one hook, bam, and it was over. And I say that to say that because with Spence and Crawford, everybody keeps asking me. I was just in Vegas, and I'll get to that later that's a few minutes down the line. But
Hmm.
everybody keeps asking me, okay, who's the bigger puncher? Is it Spence or is it Crawford? You would think that most people would say it's Spence because he's been at 147. He walks
Hmm.
around at 165, and he's supposedly the bigger guy until you see them together and you realize that Crawford's been masquerading up until this point as a 140. And then he
Hmm.
moved until he moved to 47, which means that, to me, he's carrying the power from 140 to 147. Errol is coming down from 65. Well, I said 65, the walk around weight, because
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
out
yeah.
said that should he win this fight, there's more of a possibility that he'll go up to 54.
Hmm.
And because if he didn't feel like he could do that, he wouldn't make that comment. But I'm going to say I think that Crawford is the better of the boxer with these two, the better
Hmm.
of the puncher. Errol might be more technical because he's a
Yeah.
breakdown fighter. If you look at the fight between he and Kell Brooks, for instance, I don't even go by Mikey Garcia or Ugas and those guys, because they just weren't there. But you got to look at Kell Brooks' fight. Kell Brooks was actually winning that fight in
Hmm.
the second half. Whatever Derek James said to him, what we've been working on in the gym, they always say, "Oh, the trainer, could encourage us to say this words," and the guy gets, "Oh, boom!" All of a sudden, "Oh, yeah, okay." Well, I don't think he's going to have that chance here in this fight. If he's
Hmm.
behind 5 or 6, I'm not saying behind 5 or 6 rounds, but if he's behind going into the middle toward the last 4 or 5 rounds of this fight, he loses. And I
Hmm.
believe that Crawford becomes the predator, and he'll make Spence his prey. Prior to that, if Errol is able to get off like he
Hmm.
wants to, use his jab, move around, then he has a great chance. I see it being a 50-50 fight. Actually, I mean, that's easy for me to say. Anybody can say 50-50. But if I had to pick a winner based on their performances, right now I had to go with Crawford. I've always believed Errol Spence, but I had to go with Crawford.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say we both had very different opinions the first time we talked about this a few years ago. We both thought, well, is the cleaner boxer with the cleaner punches. He throws tighter, but Crawford has just been showcasing his skills, and Spence has been showing like not a lack of power, but he doesn't. He's a volume puncher.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
plain and simple. And if it's like you said, it probably all comes down to the jab, right? Like because Crawford starts throwing crazy punches from the first few rounds, and he's looking to counter, he's looking for weaknesses, he's looking for reactions, and he risks a lot those first few rounds. And I think he's pretty hittable those first few rounds. So if Spence can gain that edge in volume and not bother him too badly, if Spence can just, like you were saying with the jab, just set up that jab early and then just keep it going, and then that's a possibility. But if Crawford, um, gets into the flow, gets into his rhythm early, then Spence is going to have a really hard time. Like whoever starts this fight, the more I think about it, the more I'm listening to you, and the more I'm thinking about my thoughts prior. Whoever starts off strong in this fight, I think, can maintain that lead for a long time. The more I think about it.
I went this. I was at the Crawford Martin fight. I'm sorry, Martin and the Armenian guy he fought last week, and they said that you can always. Angelo Dundee said this to me a long time ago. He said you can tell some trainers by what their fighters do because they all tend to do the same thing. I watched Crawford in this fight against this guy, and I really had him losing the fight. I don't care what they say. The guy takes a knee, steps down, he pours it on. But I had him behind by easily 3 rounds going into the last round. Now, he may have won the 10th round, the 11th round, and maybe even the 10th. But dude, he lost 7 of those first 9 rounds easily. Now, it wasn't a knockdown. He went down on one knee because he had got hit in the eye, and he said he couldn't see. And that was kind of smart to avoid the knockout, being stoppage. He went down on a knee and got himself together. And Martin started to pour it on a little bit more. But as I said earlier, I seen exactly what Errol did against Kell Brook. He actually did it, to be honest with you, he even did it against Mikey Garcia, who's a much smaller guy still. He waits a little bit of time before he starts to pour it on. And it's like, and I hear Derek in the corner sometimes like, okay, now you got to do this. Now you got to do this. There is no urgency until.
Do you think too much caution, or do you think the killer instinct doesn't kick in until he sees they're already kind of hurt?
I think until he sees them already kind of hurt. I really do. I think that it's like, I have to feel like, okay, we've broken him down now. In the Kell Brook fight, I think you could see it. I mean, he actually broke him down. Those last 2 rounds before the fight but the kid was getting off on Errol. And I talked to Derek afterwards, and they flew overseas, and I think they only went like 5 or 6 days before the fight. So okay, you can kind of say, acclamation and all that kind of stuff like that. But then I've seen him do the same thing in all of his fights. He's not a rusher. You got these double southpaws in here now. And if Crawford tends to think that he's going to beat another southpaw, he's wrong because, I'm sorry, not Crawford, Errol. Because Crawford can switch up better than any fighter I've seen in the last 10 or 15 years. This guy can make adjustments, man. And if his jab is not working from the left side, then he's going to counter, he's going to change up, and he's going to make Spence have to think again. And sometimes, this is when you have to wonder, what happens when you make a fighter think? at
Who's
some
used to being really cautious and really
yeah,
safe and building up slowly over time. What happens when you change the whole
you
game
change
plan?
the whole game on him, you know.
Hmm.
And I think Derek is going to realize. I'm hoping, like I said, but I've seen his fighters, and if you saw the fight with Joshua, he's gotten Joshua into that mode. That the one fight they had, it's
Hmm.
like Joshua, like, okay, I'm going to be a little bit more patient now, you know.
Hmm.
But you're the power puncher guy. You're supposed to be the guy to go and finish the guy, you
Yeah.
know. And so I'm looking to see, and the first 3 or 4 rounds are going to tell that. I think Crawford, like you said, I think Crawford's going to come. Crawford told me he wants a knockout. You know, that's what he wants, and I don't think he wants to leave any doubt. And Errol is saying, I don't want to use the words he said last week, but you know, he in general, you know, he wants to knock out too. So now, do we get a chance to see a fight that's going to be like Tommy
The
Hearns?
war?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the war, Tommy Hearns and Marvin Hagler?
Mhm.
Do we get a loud Foreman type fight in the welterweight divisions? You know, I mean, we have a chance. This is a chance because both of these guys are really at the twilights of their career. Maybe honestly, to be honest with you, I say past the twilight because they're both in their mid-30s, headed toward the
Yeah.
downside.
Hmm.
So, unless a guy decides to, hey, look, man, I'm going all out. And I think Crawford has that ability, has that mindset more than Errol Spence does.
You told me last time that you felt that he wanted the fight more than Spence wanted the fight.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's because Errol has always gotten the press. He's
Hmm.
always got, you know, they labeled him the truth 6 or 7 years ago. Errol the truth Spence, right? So he's
Hmm.
always gotten it. He's fought in Dallas. He's had the bigger crowds in Dallas. He was supposed to get the fight with Pacquiao, and they even talked around the Mayweather fight with him and everything. So he's always got it. Crawford
Hmm.
being from the little town in somewhere, what is it? What's the town he's from?
I can't even remember.
Somewhere. Yes, what I'm talking about exactly.
Yeah.
He's been from that town that where it's from Warren Buffett's hometown. That's all I can say. Nebraska, I think it is. But Iowa, one of those towns. Anyway, so he's had great fights there, television wise. A lot of people seem to think that Aaron may have done a great job in what's the word, cherry picking. But
Yeah.
you develop your skills sometime with the guys that you're supposed to be. You
Hmm.
know, that's how you develop your skills. But he wanted this fight because he's fighting Errol Spence and the media that's been projecting Errol Spence as being the number one for so long. And now he has that title of pound for pound. I think that's what they call Crawford, the pound for pound champion, which I don't know what that means anyway. But I think that's what they call him. So he's fighting for that. It's more, I don't want to say it's more for him, David, but I think this fight means a lot more to him than it does to Errol Spence, considering a lot of people thinking that Errol has issues, some problems. Last week,
Yeah.
you know, with the car wreck, 2 wrecks, as a matter of fact, 2 accidents, and people from his own camp, there are people actually from his own camp, don't believe that. When I say on camp, but not, yeah, in his group of people, because
Hmm.
I talked with them. They didn't want this fight for the simple cause they thinking that Crawford's going to derail him. And
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
this is on people. And some of these guys know more than what we know. Yeah, the guy said that, you know, well, Errol's got to, they make comments like, you know, Errol's got to stop this drinking. You know, he's
Hmm.
got to stop, he got to rest and, you know, got to go home and do things at night. I never seen Errol Spence as being a partying guy, but when you start looking at the fact that,
He
hey, the
crashed
guy
his car, yeah, and
and a
all that.
Ferrari over 2 o'clock in the morning, where there's, you know, nothing open at 2 o'clock in the morning, but hospitals and legs. That's what my mother used to always say, you know. So, so where was he going that time of the night? He had just left a bar. Then the next one that he had was the same weight. So you have to think about this. Those rumors. Now, does that mean he's undefeated? So that's still saying whatever he's been doing, you know, he's pretty good at it. But now he's stepping up against a guy that wants to prove a legacy for himself
With a
and
chip on his shoulder.
with a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I think I really want them to just start going at it, and because if this is a great fight, right? Like a fantastic fight. Like I just did a breakdown on Fury versus Wilder 3, like
Okay.
knockdowns from both guys back and forth. I'm not saying people need to get knocked down back and forth for it to be a great fight, but if this is competitive or just really fun, they both go at it, one guy wins, it's quick, but it's like the war, then we get a lot more fights like this,
Yeah.
But people get more interested in boxing. If this is like a technical chess match that kind of peters out at the end, and then it's like, a Mayweather Pacquiao type of thing, it doesn't matter who wins at that point because everyone just kind of loses.
Yeah, right. And you're just glad it's over. Just glad it's over. Okay. Because you can't point to one, you cannot point to one round in that fight that made anybody think like, oh my God, this is going to happen. No. And you're right. When I lost the point, but I'm going to go back.
Okay.
The mentioning of last week, they said the fact that every major fight, every major so-called super fight, I don't see this as a super fight, and I explain why I don't see it as a super fight. I see it as a good fight, but I don't see it as a super fight. They said, well, Sports Illustrated, Time Magazine, even Life, had Ali, Foreman, Holmes, Leonard, Hagler, Hearn, that whole group, Duran, that I think maybe even Mayweather, I'm not sure, but that whole legacy generation of 60s to the 90s of great fights being put out, been put on their cover, and it's not there. And the reason
no one in the boxing world, it seems like no one in the boxing world is even near as excited for it as they were like Haney versus Lomachenko.
Yeah,
really,
Davis and Garcia. I mean,
let's face it. That had way more hype. Way more hype than either of those two. Yeah.
Both of these guys, neither one of these guys are what you call media whores. Okay. And and I say that because Errol doesn't like to speak. If you watch him speak, he speaks in a very low tone voice, like, I just want to do this, get this over. That's how he talks.
I just want to get this over.
And Crawford says pretty much the same thing. I like it,
I'm going to do my talking in the ring.
Yeah, I'm going to do my talking in the ring. Well, I haven't seen these guys on. The one thing I learned in working in the media and dealing with George, especially on the comeback, but even before that, but on the comeback, is that it's so important that people outside your sport get to know who you are.
Yes.
If you don't, like Garcia and those guys had the YouTubers, whatever he has, his following was crazy. So they went like, oh, we don't know if we like the guy. He's a handsome guy. What the hell? We're going to buy $90 and we're going to, whatever the fight costs, we're going to pay for that. But
yeah, a lot of people paid to see him get knocked out too.
It just paid to see him get knocked out. Well, neither of these guys have that, David, not a one. Because they don't, there's no, so like I said, when you speak to them, you kind of have to get the guy, if you at work and the guy, and this fight is coming up next week now, this week, and the guy next to you in your, what's those things they have, cubicles. If he's not reaching over asking you, man, you going to go see the fight this weekend? Are you going to order the fight? Or the girls that you work with, husband and boyfriends, are not asking the same questions, you got a problem. And
it's a pretty big problem. Aside from their media stuff too, I feel like neither of them have really fought names that were too recognizable. Like, a lot of boxers coming up, they fight legends. They might be legends past their prime, the fans of those legends, they tune in and they see this new guy knock out their legend, and maybe they're a little ticked off, but then people know who that person is. And that hasn't happened really with either of these guys to that extent. Pacquiao would have made that happen for sure.
Yeah, Pacquiao would have made that happen. And when Ugas beat Pacquiao, because they didn't want to put Ugas on the pedestal, they still wanted to say that Pacquiao's fastest thing and Errol would have stopped him. I think it'd have been a totally different fight between him and Manny Pacquiao.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
my
I don't know
opinion,
if Pacquiao, I don't know if Pacquiao's mind was even in it,
yeah, I don't know
for
because
Ugas.
he was
Yeah,
1 week before the fight. You're signed. You prepared to fight Errol Spence.
yeah.
Not got this guy who you can't pronounce his damn name. So that's first of all. Is it Ugas Ugas? What is the guy's name?
He did a good, well, whatever his name is, he did a great job against, Manny Pacquiao, and wasn't given, like you said, he wasn't really given his due. But at the same time, like, does anyone think that he could have actually defeated Pacquiao even 3 years ago?
No.
Like, no, but he did do a good job, and he's an impressive boxer at least,
Well, he won the fight. He's not a bad guy. He stayed in and took a beating against Errol. I mean,
Mhm.
Errol put some.
Yeah.
He, I
But
have
Errol beating him did not have like you beat the guy who beat the guy feel to it.
no, no. It
No,
wasn't like
that's what you're saying. Yeah.
yes, that's exactly right. So I mean, but when you start putting that together, I haven't seen them on one talk show, Good Morning America, Today Show, the late night talk shows. To me, the PR media that they have for this fight, and that's always been a problem with PBC fighters anyway. I'm not looking at Aaron with Crawford was just
No
Aaron
one
guilty.
knows what the hell PBC is.
Right.
And they have some of the best boxers and some of the best fights,
Yes, they
and they
do.
have like their YouTube channel. They have a YouTube channel with all these fights on them, and people watch the fights. And you run across them, and you're like, oh yeah, PBC, they exist. I said the name
Yeah,
Top Rank.
yeah.
Okay, Top Rank. Everyone knows Top Rank. PBC is like, oh yeah, it's a YouTube channel, right, where they host the fights. It's like that's what people think it is.
Even Golden Boy has a bigger
Yeah,
outlook than PBC. But the problem is
yeah,
going to be now is that last week I seen that the price of tickets are like $9,000, right? That's for two tickets, $4,500. Some of
jeez.
them are 18. It's 18,000, I think, for four. It depends on where you are. If you can't, and they have packages that's just crazy. This fight is not selling for the simple reason as you just said. No one knows who these guys are. You
Yeah,
know, me, Terrence Crawford's daughter has more of a following than he has. Because if you remember, just last year, his daughter went viral with like 3 million views. She was
hmm.
running track and her shoe came off. She stops and picks up her shoe and catches the girls and beat them still about 10 yards. That thing went all over the country. Now, if I'm part of Crawford's thing, that becomes part of his whole thing. Listen, I have his daughter
Yeah,
with
you were
me.
telling me before. Yeah,
I told you
no,
that before.
yeah, build on it.
You got to build on that,
Hmm.
because where'd that come from? Well, I'm a great athlete myself, and I'm pound for pound. I'm the greatest boxer going right now. But nobody touched that, David. That
Yeah,
was
no, if I'm him, I'm walking out with, and my ring outfit's like a giant flip-flop shoe or something. I'm
yeah,
talking about
right.
that every 5 seconds. Like
Every
even
time.
my daughter could beat your ass. I'm saying that every 5 seconds. You know?
Exactly. Exactly. You know, when you talk to the guys, is just some of the fighters, and I asked them who you think's going to win. Two or 3 years ago, everybody was locked in on Terrence. I mean, on Errol.
Yeah,
Now it's then floated over to Terrence Crawford because if physically, I was with the guy, man, with both of them for that matter. But when I seen Terrence, I see a guy that's just like his body. It's just what it is. It's solid.
mhm.
It's
Eating
solid.
clean probably.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I said eating clean probably, not
Yeah,
drinking
yeah,
every day.
yeah.
But
Eating
yeah,
clean. He doesn't
yeah,
drink. He doesn't have any of those kind of habits. Been out from Nebraska, maybe corn whiskey could have been his thing at one time, but that's not a stab on the people from Nebraska. I'm just saying. But I don't want nobody to get mad at me and say all of us don't drink corn whiskey in Nebraska.
they're not gonna come over to you all the way from Nebraska. It's
But I think the problem has been will be this week is going to have to be if there's a push. You know what I mean by a push, which means that tomorrow, I think I just got a thing for the weigh-in. I think it's going to be Thursday. So they're sending out stuff about the weigh-in, but there are no demands for people to be standing around. Crawford's been training that for the last 2 weeks. I mean, I'm sorry, Errol. Crawford's Errol winning this week. So they've been training there, doing media stuff around, but the local people are not buying $500 tickets. It's $500 to get in, but I'm hearing from some of the ticket brokers, well, what happens is you put the tickets on sale for $200, ticket brokers grab them and they double up the price thinking that this is going to be that fight. But a lot of these guys are telling me that come fight time, the day before fight time, those tickets are going to be down to $200, which might help from a crowd standpoint. The fact that the fight, I think, is $84.99 or something like that, or $89.99. Maybe this is that fight that people tune into. But then again, maybe this is that fight that a bunch of people get together and watch it at home. Everybody's got the streaming. Everybody has the the Fire Sticks. People are finding ways to break this thing now. I think they priced it a little bit too high because PBC and Showtime, this, more than anything, this is a testimony of Espinosa's job at Showtime. This fight is not a success. He's got 2 fights that he's made. If this fight is not a success, and then you come back with Canelo and Charlo, which we can go over that if you like to in a few minutes, but if you come back in Canelo and Charlo, and those fights, Canelo's going to bring his 800,000 people. You know that most of the time, 800 to 1,000 media people. He's going to bring.
No, he doesn't have a problem selling shit.
No, he doesn't have a problem at all. So if that's going to happen, and that fight is a success from a pay-per-view standpoint or a streaming standpoint, Showtime is in the game. But if these fights don't make it the way they think, this fight, Showtime may shut down. There was already the threat they've been saying that Showtime was about to do the HBO thing anyway, shut down. Yeah. So these 2 fights are very critical. And I won't say that they will get out of the boxing game like HBO did, just, hey, that's it, we wash our hands of it. But I got a feeling you could see a pull back and it all really started, if you look at it, it goes back to when they signed the package with Mayweather. They overpaid for that package by a whole lot. And they never received the benefits of what they paid. Because the only fight they got out of it was, you caught McGregor and, Pacquiao.
Yeah.
But that was a sideshow with McGregor anyway. Because the MMA people got excited behind it. And that was that crowd.
That was actually a fun fight. Even though it was so one-sided. That's the thing. One-sided fights can be really fun if both guys are there to fight.
Yeah, and McGregor was trying to fight him. I gave him 1 round. He took a little bit to it. But the thing was, you brought another crowd of people to that fight that otherwise would not have taken on buying and purchasing that fight. So the Madonna fight, and then the 2 he had after that, I forget who it was. So now we're looking at, this is a turning point for the sport of pay-per-view boxing, because people are going to realize now, even with the streaming, I can go stream a fight for $10 or $12 or $15 or for free, for that matter. But I think it's going to enhance. If anything, it could enhance the life of the local promoters to a point where, if they're going to start streaming, but the fighters are going to have to get behind to push it as well. Because you have a lot of guys that fight away from home on somebody else's cards, and they're the B side, as they call it, A and B side. But, it's one of those things that boxing needs to publicity. And as you just said at the start, this is the one, David. This is the one. If it falls flat on his face, it's going to be a mess.
All right, let's talk about, speaking of new faces of boxing or old faces of boxing, or people that have proven themselves in the past. Is anyone actually excited for this Canelo fight, do you think?
No.
Okay, that's a very blunt assessment.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, why? What has Charlo done to make you think? If he beats Canelo, let's say if he beats Canelo, what does it do? We've been saying for the last 2 or 3 years that Canelo was bound to hit that slope. and go down.
Yeah, he's done incredible things. He really doesn't need to do anything,
No,
anymore. Yeah.
I mean, and Charlo, they just didn't fight. You know what I mean? How are you going to get guys? Again, there's a guy, the A side, as they call it, so we know the Canelo. You satisfied for this side because your brother was supposed to take the fight, but he couldn't take the fight, so you stepped in. And I'm like, damn, is this like Robin Hood
It's
or something?
convenient it's convenient to have a twin, I guess.
Yeah,
Just like,
right.
you gonna do that for your wedding too? Like I couldn't be there.
My brother's stepping in for me tonight. I'm sorry, I can't make it. And the wife was gonna say, "Oh, okay, no problem." I mean, I've never seen anything like this before. Never.
Yeah.
So nobody's excited about this. And honestly, I believe he knocks Charlo. I think he stops Charlo in 8 to 10 rounds. I really do. And that's only because I don't think the Charlos has enough. One of my son, Jonathan, who does he does his own little thing with some friends, guys and friends of his down in Houston, and they talk about the fighter. They're Charlo fans, they pour that hype that they, boy, Charlo's this, and I've been telling them, man, those guys, they talk themselves into a good situation, but they haven't done anything. I think that the inactivity that he's had, whereas Canelo has been active if nothing else. And when you start getting it to 7, 8, and 10 rounds, and you haven't been in that type of war battle for 2 or 3 or 4 years, it tells. There's only so much wood chop. I don't care how much wood chopping you do, how much running you do. Boy, it's nothing like when you got to use both these fists at the same time, and then the guys are doing the same thing to you. And I think that's what's going to happen with that fight. I'd be surprised if it goes the distance. I'm more shocked, and if Charlo wins, I'm even more shocked. But I think
I'm interested in seeing if Canelo is going to go back to kind of his older style, because I feel like he's like his last couple of fights he's been pulling kind of like a later year Mike Tyson, where it's just like you lob the left body hook and then you lob the left head hook, and you just assume that it's gonna, and then you take punches on the guard and you just try to power through. Yeah, that's what I'm most interested in seeing. I'm most interested in seeing is Canelo going to go back to some of the actual what he was originally known for, the fancy boxing and defense, or is he just gonna the rest of his career like I'm in love with my power, just lob overhand rights, just lob left hooks,
Well, this is a fight again. We're looking at Derrick James again as for the trainer. This is that fight because he has Charlo, Joshua, Martin, and Terrence about Errol. We're looking at the same thing. It's the same type of fight of him starting slow, trying to get Canelo in the end. I don't think that's going to happen. But I'll tell you something.
Not a great strategy if it is.
Yeah, but I tell you, because you can listen, man. Canelo could throw 3 punches. You can throw 15. If you don't hurt him with none, guess who won the round? So that's the thing, because everybody knows who their meal ticket is. But Canelo doesn't like these guys. He doesn't like them. He's never liked them. So I can see, they've talked, and you realize that both of them basically, even though Canelo's in Mexico, he's in Texas a lot. The Charlos are there in Texas. So it's a thing where he's got to prove to people in both the population of Mexico and Texas that he's just this much better. And I think he's that much better. I think he has enough. Does he have enough he's talking about he wants to do, Charlo, then he'll fight the winner of Spence and Charlo, and Crawford if they want to move up. And then there's somebody else, Benavidez.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which I don't think any of them are going to mess with Benavidez. If he is, he'll be the last one on that totem pole.
Because Benavidez is pretty damn legit. He has some major flaws in his game, but they're more stylistic flaws that he's chosen to have, which is fun.
Yeah.
Like that's like saying Prince Nassim had flaws. Like, well, he chose to have them. His problem was obviously he couldn't revert back to whatever. We've talked about that before. But like Benavidez, I could see if he wanted to, he could be a tight technical boxer, but he wants to swarm. He wants to swarm. He wants to be exciting. He wants to lower his hands. He wants to use fancy footwork, and he wants to just beat on the guy until they drop. and that would be a really fun fight, him versus Canelo.
Well,
You
see,
know?
but that's what I mean in that trilogy of fighters, right? Canelo, Charlo, Benavidez. Let's throw Andre in there somewhere, okay?
Hmm.
Plus, he's kind of like the odd man out because why? Nobody knows who the hell he is. I mean, that's what it boils down. There again, you're dealing with, more people know Charlo than Andre, and that's saying a heck of a lot, But more people know him than they do. Less people rather know him than any of those guys. So that's why they keep mentioning, okay, if he wins this fight, then he's going to fight this guy. Then to close out with Benavidez. And if it does, and he wins those 3 fights, Canelo goes down, in my opinion. Forget the fact that he lost to was it Bevo, I think he lost the fight to.
Bible, yeah.
Yeah, whatever you put there. I mean, I've never been a tournament boxer. I got so many damn guys' names I can't pronounce.
I'm just going by what I remember. I could be wrong. I could be wrong too. Like, I
I
think he's Russian, so it's probably something like directly in between those two vowels.
Yeah,
So at
between
that
those
point,
two.
just pick your poison.
And I studied linguistics in college, David. But these names, man, I like Inoue. Inoue? What is it? How you pronounce it? Now I want to talk about that.
I had to look that up so many times. It is in a way.
Inoue. So I was
Yeah, because
somebody told me
there's a video where the guy who's with him who speaks English gets pissed off at the reporter for mispronouncing his name, which that's understandable. If you're interviewing the guy, know his name, But it's really funny because he had to tell him slow motion what the fighter's name was like 5 times, and the reporter
Okay.
couldn't get it. He's like, Inoue, Inoue, no,
No
Inoue,
way.
yeah, Noya, Inoue.
See, we want to pronounce it like we did in 3rd grade. We look at what they told us to pronounce the E and pronounce the
Yeah,
law.
yeah. It's
That's
all
not
bullshit.
that's
All
not where it
bullshit.
goes. Yeah, so it's like, all right, I didn't have any Japanese fight. I don't know about you, but I didn't have any come in my school. So we didn't have to we had Smith, David, Wilson, Foreman, Freeman. But I tell people all the time, I was Freeman for about the first 6 years in school. So, so
That's fine. Yeah, I'm Christian. That's my first name. It's not David Christian. My name, everyone who's ever met me is like, oh, hey, Christian. I'm like, all right, whatever.
So we get used to that. But I mean, when you see guys like this, like those types of fighters with the skills and the techniques and the knowledge and the following, because this kid has amassed a large following over here. Talking about
Anyway, yeah.
Anyway, so he's amassed a terrific following. The guy that he's fighting, Fulton, I know a little about him. I've watched his videos, but I haven't seen. I think he was picked because he was unimpressive. He had a couple of knockouts he looked decent in, but
his team's selling the fight at least. They've got everyone saying that Inoue is like loading his gloves or some stupid thing. Was like, who cares if there's a dumb internet controversy about how the Japanese fighters wrap their glove versus American. It was like legal every time. He's just saying he didn't like it, kind of a thing. But it's selling the fight, which is great. It doesn't matter if the argument's stupid as long as people tune in.
Yeah, I mean, who knew about the fight? That's what I'm saying. Who knew about it? And I think the fight takes place on a Tuesday night, doesn't it? Hell, I mean, that's another.
I think it's in a couple days, so it must be.
Yeah. Tuesday nights. Tuesday night fights have been going so long. So who's thinking about tuning in Tuesday night to watch a fight? They just done that now.
Pretty much just me, because I love it. I love it. I love his style. I'm a pretty big fan of him.
I am too.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. No, he's technical and very aggressive and very fun to watch.
And the Monster is a great name for him. I love the fact that there's another name that they gave him, the Monster. And I think maybe 2 years ago I started watching it. I told people watch this kid because I seen him possibly as being the next Pacquiao in boxing, being able to move up in those weight categories.
Yeah, I mean, you would think he doesn't have the frame to go up much more, but then you would think that looking at Pacquiao to start too.
Man is only 5'2". I mean, basically, if I say that, but
he came up to the top floor when I was hitting the bag at what's it called? It's been so many years now. Wild cards. I was hitting because it's like you could just pay $5 and hit the bag at wild cards, and that's fine. And sometimes Freddie walk around and like give you advice, and it was cool. It was right next to my house at the time. So or apartment. I wish I had a house. But so he came up one time, and I'm like, okay, his official height is just a straight up blatant lie,
Yes, it is.
because I'm 5'7", so we should be about equal heights. And it was like, no, this dude is like 5'2", 5'3", and I'm like,
I'm
but he
telling
fought
you,
like 6 feet guys and knocked him out. That's nuts.
I felt
That's
like King Kong and Godzilla with that guy, man. I feel like, oh boy, I stood next to him like, oh shit, you mean I'm taller than him? It's like Kevin Hart is, I think, is a little taller than he is. This guy, that's how little he is. But it's amazing what he has. So
yeah,
I'm saying I think this kid has a, if done right. Now, will he go to 47 and beat some of those guys? Because some of those guys are just monsters at that weight. I don't know, but I could see him. I could probably see him managing pretty well a fight up until 135 easily, 130 without a problem. And I don't see a lot of competition by that time because all those guys have moved up and gone away. Haney,
mm.
Campos, what's his name, Lopez. Now those guys did move away. So is it possible? Yeah. And then that puts him in that scenario. Does he go to 54? I don't know. Now there's a story that possibility he may be on PEDs or whatever they call it, performance enhancement drugs, so who knows? But we'll find out. But the things that's allowed in Japan, if he gets he's fought here, I think. So I mean it's not like he
Yeah,
had
yeah.
successful here. So I don't think I think that they're paying good money for this guy to fight. And
You have
for
those
this
great
guy,
fights against Donaire, right?
yeah, he did. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
those were
why
those were really fun. Yeah,
Fulton, that's why I say everybody said Fulton's trainer said, well, we're not going to climb into the ring if that dude, that's $3 million on the table. You're going to climb. Fulton
yeah.
looked at
You're
him.
gonna climb into the ring, and you're gonna be happy to be in the ring. That's what's gonna happen.
Fulton looked at him like, we,
Yeah,
yeah, no, no. Well, listen, when it boils down to it, the fighter's hands is to protect the fighter's hands. And I told people, George, being the puncher that he was, they used to have to make him put on the pads because he didn't
mm.
need it. He didn't want it. But it's
Hmm.
now rulers, you have to have this, and you have to have this, and you have to have that. Well, his power was going to hurt you one way or the other. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what he hits you with. This guy,
Mm.
you can't, the guy said, well, he's making a cast on his hand. We actually fought a fighter, and I'm not going to name the fighter because the fighter's passed since that time. We actually fought a fighter that actual George did. The guy literally made a cast on his hand.
Ooh.
Yes,
Okay.
and it
And
was
George
like,
could feel the difference then.
if you look at
Yeah.
if you ever see the one fight I'm talking about, you know exactly what I'm talking about because there were knocks, man, that was like, dang, where'd that come?
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
but what happened was by the time that after the fight was over with, I knew something was up. But by the time I got to the dressing rooms, they had pretty much cleared it out. But I found one of the hand wraps, and not the whole hand wrap, but a
Hmm.
part of it because it had been cut, and I knew
Hmm.
it. But the commission, he got away with it. How did he get away with it with the commission? I don't know. But they said Vegas allowed this, so evidently, if Vegas has allowed it, it was nothing illegal. But because we always had someone to be in the dressing room when they wrap their hands. Well, every
Yeah.
once in a while, these guys will make the suspectors look away, something happens, guy in the slick, and the guy that he had in his corner was a very slick guy. I knew him for a long time. And he knew just enough to dip out. All you have to do is tape and dip it in that ice or dip it in that water for a second. It hardens up just like a plaster Paris.
That was the Margarito thing, right? Too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Margarita, same way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy that, like, I guess the power is pretty much the same, but it could just damage the skin and cause so many bruises and cuts and
Yes,
ruin
it
your
can.
eyesight and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
very blessed that nothing happened with him after that fight. He won the fight, but I mean, just the idea that it was a tough fight, tougher
No,
than what it
yes.
been. Because I knew something was up the way George was hitting this guy. This guy would come back and hit George, and he didn't. That's the thing. But it's like, damn, George could take some shots, and he did that night. But man, when
Mm.
it was over with, it was like knots here, knots there. He's never swelled up in a fight like that. No, that's the only one he ever had that in.
Inoue
Money.
doesn't really need to do that though. Like
There's
that's the thing. Like he's not the kind of guy that beats you down over time either and like gets you all swollen or whatever. Like he knocks you out. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah,
Exactly.
one of those like tiny guys who could move really fast and it equates to power. And
Like just like Manny did. Manny was all over the ring. You know, the Barrera fight is a good example, man. I listen more than anyone. I was shocked in the Barrera fight with Pacquiao. I was shocked because he
yeah,
just literally what you know. Jesus, man, Barrera was one of my favorite fighters at that time. You
mhm.
know, babyface assassin is what they called him. But
No,
he handled
he was incredible. He's underrated.
yes, very
Yeah,
underrated. Underrated. But I mean, but Pacquiao just made him it was like nothing, man. It was amazing. And of course, he
yeah.
comes
Well,
back and and this is after he had destroyed the prince and everything, So everybody thought that this guy was going to be the one, but it
well,
happened.
Pacquiao's unorthodox style isn't built around flashiness. It's weird, but it's not there to be impressive. It's there to get the job done. I think that's the
It,
main difference. You
it's
know?
like not. It's like Nassim, same way. Not nothing. It's not. It's what is the style? Nas. I don't know what Nas style. I don't know what his style was. God,
Yeah,
to this day.
yeah,
I still don't understand
yeah.
how that guy was as successful as he was. Like I said, then again, Barrera proved it at the same time. You come up against a master boxer, you got a problem. And he never was the same after that fight either.
Yeah. No, every division right now has a couple stars, potential stars. No one,
Mm-hmm.
like, very few have really skyrocketed, but this year's been really, really good for boxing, if you actually think about it. We've
Yeah,
had
oh,
some
it's been
great,
a great
yeah,
year, man. Yes,
yeah.
considering how it started off, because we didn't think we'd see any of these. I could say I don't think that we would have seen Davidson Garcia, Shakur. Uh, I like Shakur. I think he's a great little fighter, Stevenson. But I
Mhm.
still think the jury is out on him. He wants Haney, he
He has
wants,
the most, he has the most potential of
yeah,
anyone.
yeah,
It's
most potential.
it's been proven somewhat, but like we're not talking about like is he a good boxer? Obviously, he's an incredible boxer, but
Right.
like is he potentially one of the greats that we'll be talking about for generations? He has, I think, out of anyone right now, the young guys, the most potential to be that. But like you said, it's not proven yet. He needs to go out there and he needs to become that legend that he's maybe capable of becoming.
And it has to happen with either Haney, and he and Davis. Even Lopez, I don't know what he quit, he came back. I don't know what he's gonna do. But I mean,
Mm.
he's one of those guys, and Keyshawn Davis is quickly moving up the ladder now. And I'm wondering what's gonna happen with that with Top Rank when Keyshawn hits that level, next year sometime, because he's thinking nobody waits anymore. You know what I mean? Nobody waits anymore. Everybody wants these 15, 16, 20. They want $1 million. They want a car. They want gold chains. Nobody wants to wait and build
Mm.
on legacy. And if nothing else, I will give Mayweather credit for the 20 some odd years he spent in the sport, that he built his legacy with that. But these
Yeah.
guys now, they don't want to do it, and especially lightweight guys. They want that quick, fast buck in a hurry, man. They're not worried about whether I'm going to be considered an all-time great. They don't want that. They're not. That's just not their. The money is what they want, and I understand it's called.
I think Stevenson is looking for legacy fights though.
I
Like
think he
I
may
feel
be.
like he is. I would be
I think
totally
he
fine with
might be
him.
the one.
I
Yeah,
want him to if anyone takes out Lomachenko and proves to Lomachenko that like you're old now, you need to stop. I want it to be Stevenson. I
and it
want
will
that
be.
torch. Yeah,
It
and
will be.
yeah. Um, I think Lomachenko's still at the point he could put up a good fight. I think he left most of what he had left though in his last fight.
Mm-hmm.
That has got to be discouraging and everything too. But I mean, if they both put on a good performance, like I can't imagine it being boring. I can't. Like people
I
are
think
saying
that's.
it could be.
I think it's the fight that Lomachenko sits on the stool and the corner says, "Hey, enough." I
Oh,
really do.
You think Lomachenko could get no must?
Yeah, I think that's the
Ah,
one where the corner just says, because this kid Stevenson, man, he's a special talent, and no doubt about
hmm.
that. He's a special talent, and he has plenty of nerves. Some fighters they talk a good game, but this kid, he goes after you or he'll box you. It doesn't matter. And his
And he has a
footwork,
chip on his shoulder. He doesn't
yeah,
like being called boring. He's
no,
like,
he
I see him
doesn't.
on Twitter. He's like, you call me boring. Watch my last few fights. I'm trying to end it all the time. you
Great
know?
footwork, great speed, handwork, everything. And a guy like Lomachenko, even though he has everything that you want a young fighter or the old fighter for that matter, everything to have, he has it. But I think that
Mhm.
at this point of nearing 40, I just don't think he can pull the trigger anymore. And a young guy, like, it'd be a great fight for him to go out on, you
Mhm.
know, win or lose. But if he goes out as a loser, everybody can still say, man, well, you know what? He went out against one of the guys that's going to be 5 years. That's probably going to be there unless something happens 5 years from now. Well, you'll see
Mhm.
him standing on top of the pedestal of everybody. I think he beats Haney. I think he beats Davis. I think he beats Stevenson. I think he beats any of those guys. At that went from 135 to 140 easily.
I'm not so sure about Stevenson versus Tank. That because
Well,
you get caught once with Tank, and that's a bad time. But I could see him shutting him down the whole fight. But I could also see Stevenson getting aggressive when he shouldn't be getting aggressive because he has that chip on his shoulder, and getting into a firefight with Davis. You know? What do
but
you
I
think?
don't think he will. I don't think he will
Okay.
because he knows that potential for Davis would love to have a firefight, but I think he knows the potential for that. I can see him challenging him for a minute or two, and if he survives
Yeah.
the round, but he knows this guy, man, because this kid is kind of he's off. He's a Mike Tyson. I tell everybody, I'm sorry, I hate to say this like this, but he's Mike Tyson reborn in all sense of the
Hmm.
word. When you look at his career and so forth, he hasn't lost, but his personal life. He's had problems with the law. He spent a little time in jail. He just has everything and he could be one of the best of his division. But the problem is, again, there's that mentality standpoint that you have. Nobody can beat me. I'm the baddest man on the planet. I'm impeccable. Whatever Tyson would
Hmm.
say. And he can't get that mindset because a guy like Davis will come along and just shove it. Boy, he'll get to shuffling on you and hitting you with those shots. And you're trying, because Garcia really didn't do that bad of a job against him. He just didn't do anything. But he didn't do
Yeah.
that. It's just what he didn't have. And I think Garcia, after about the third round, he got afraid. I really do. So it wasn't hard to stop the fight. Uh,
Yeah, Garcia just kept, we talked about like what happens if Garcia his defensive holes come back, and
mm-hmm.
then they did, and then after the fight there was a video circulating of his coach like telling him over and over again, when you throw your hook, cover your head. When you
Cover
throw
your
your hook,
head. Right. That's
and
right.
he straight up was not listening to him. And I bet he'll listen now.
Well, yeah. He's over again. He's over there. He's in the camp with Derrick James now too. So
Okay.
is Derrick becoming the Mr. Fix It for these guys? We're gonna find out because they're talking about he and Ortiz sometime, probably Riley Romero, I think toward the end of the summer maybe or in the fall. So is he going to be? I watched we started the Mr. Fix It thing, but I saw the fight between Joshua and Franklin. I forget the kid's name. He fought. I didn't see a lot of change in it, but one fight. I'm not going to
Yeah.
blame him on one fight, but Josh was still a guy I thought he was actually 6 years ago. Just a big guy. He's a Ken Norton to me of the heavyweights in the 2020s, and I'll still say that. He'll win
Hmm.
some fights, but every time he's pushed up against, it's going to be if he's challenged, he can crumble.
Hmm. Yeah, the idea of like a Mr. Fix It is just so ridiculous to me because like it's a bunch of guys who have a particular thing they're really good at,
Mm-hmm.
and they survived and even dominated and got to a championship level while ignoring these basic fundamentals. And
Exactly.
that's so ridiculous that that can still happen nowadays, you know?
Well, there's so few teachers though, David. That's the reason. Listen,
Mhm.
when you think about it, Emmanuel Stewart,
Probably the best there ever was.
probably the best there ever was.
Yeah.
Angelo, Mr. Miller. Uh, we bring Freddie into this bunch only because Freddie, I have never seen Freddie develop a fighter. Don't get me wrong. He's been in the corner with some good fighters. People go, call Freddie Roach up in
Mhm.
the last 10 years. But
You mean he's developed certain aspects, but he's never built someone up from the very start, is
from
what
the
you're
yeah,
saying.
from the and
Okay.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen that. And so to say even what's the guy's Robert Garcia? these guys, sometimes a trainer can talk himself into people thinking he's great or better than what he is, especially if his fighter wins. Like, oh God, Robert
Yeah,
Russell
yeah.
this,
Every profession
they
can do
can
that. Yeah,
talk that a good the greatest quarter. Of course, Belichick was a hell of a coach because he had a hell of a quarterback.
yeah.
But
I'm an amazing businessman. I only started off with $1 million loan. It's like from family.
from
It's
family.
like yeah,
I only
yeah.
had $1 million, so I only made it. My family was worth $1 billion, so but I made it.
I
So I
made
mean,
it on
you
my
look at
own.
that.
Yeah.
And so if I had to go in the last 10 years, I would literally say that Derrick James has been that trainer because he has taken 2 or 3 of these guys and literally brought them into that realm of possibility of becoming great. And I throw Roger Mayweather in that same category because he worked with his nephew for so many years. One
Yeah.
guy enough, but I look at that. So we don't have the teachers around. And as you just said, you get a guy that has somewhat flawed fundamentals, but he's a good puncher. He can do this and do that. And no one makes him pay for the mistakes he makes. And then when he starts making the mistakes, that's when you find out, okay, what kind of trainer do you have? Because if your trainer can't adapt, you're in trouble.
No, there was a clip going around of Spence's coach caught him in the what's it called? The when they show their workout. There's a name for it. Press workout, whatever it's
A
called.
press
So,
workout, okay.
yeah, yeah. So there were he's having him hit the pads and then he hits Spence with the left hook. And then Spence looks like ticked off because he found an opening. And I'm like, that's a good coach. He's
It's
letting
a
him
good
know that
coach.
he's open there. Maybe, you can argue whether it's a good idea to do that in front of the press or not, but overall, that's a good coach who's letting you know you are vulnerable here and not just blowing smoke up your ass and telling you you're the best ever and like, yeah, hit it harder. Hit it harder. Okay, my job's done. You know?
Derrick James actually boxed for me, right? In
Mm,
the 90s. I've been knowing Derrick since he was about 18 or 19 years of age. He was a
mm,
good fighter. I took him around the world places with me. We went to Mexico and Canada. We went all over the country with him fighting for me. He wasn't the greatest fighter, but I always knew that he had a love for the sport of boxing.
yeah.
And to think that here it is 30 years later, that I think this kid would be possibly coaching one of the biggest fights in the history of boxing, especially in the last 10 to 15 years. I'm just
Mm,
so amazed. And we have a great friendship. We talk all the time. Then I
mm.
see him. But I say this to say that I think the kid has shows tremendous potential. Now, has he reached his Waterloo with these guys? Did these
Mm.
Charlo and Spence walked into the gym with him? Joshua came in. Martin walked into the gym with him. Garcia, we won't hold that against him. We won't even hold Joshua for whatever flaws that they have. But should these 3 guys go on to manage and maintain their because we got to throw Martin to that lightweight division too now because he just won this fight last week. He's going to be ranked somewhere in the top 3.
Mm.
Pardon me, 3 or 4 himself now. So you got to throw him into that division. So Derrick could possibly wind up with 5 world champions at some time or another.
Mm.
But at the same time, and that's the Emmanuel, now we're getting into that Emmanuel Stewart legacy of, 10, 12, 50. I mean, because everybody's going to want to send a guy, but can you have too much? Sure, you can. You
Yeah.
can have too much. Emmanuel had a lot of help. He was the main guy down there, but he had an awful lot of help. Guys, Prentice Bird, Ferris Purified, that were great coaches, backup guys. But as far as it's this Waterloo. It tends to happen when one guy starts to lose, then the other guy starts to lose, and then the other guy starts. Then all of a sudden, well, never thought he was that great of a trainer anyway. But so far, he's shown me, and I think the boxing world, with trainer of the year, I think twice, and run up the other third time. So it's going to be interesting to see. That's why I said I don't know much about Terrence Crawford's corner, Bo Mack, the guy I think that's in his corner, and who else he has in there. But it's going to be interesting to see what exactly will the trainers bring to this game other than the super talent that both fighters have.
Didn't was it Joe Louis and Sugar Ray Robinson have the same coach or something?
And
Black
one point, well, Blackburn.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, those guys back in
Did
those
he did
guys.
he and did he bring them up because they had such different styles, or was
Well,
he more so brought in?
he brought up Joe for sure.
Okay.
Ray had
Yeah.
been fighting for a while, but Blackburn came in, at
Hmm.
the not before he reached the greatness, but while his career was already started. And
Yeah.
guys like, but that's the problem nowadays because guys will send people, a promoter would say, I'm going to send my guy down for this guy to develop him. Nowadays, the trainers, these guys are in the towns, or whether it be in Dallas or whether it be in Chicago, whatever, the fighters are staying home now more. They're not going on, they're not leaving away as they always did in the past. And then until they're able to get that fights or those fights that they need, then there's LA, Vegas, New York, or whatever's on the horizon for them to make that happen. But in today's market, I don't see, that's why it's so surprising with Derrick James, because I don't see most of these guys get hooked on one fighter. And that's pretty much where they stay. You look at Canelo down with Gus. I think he's down there with Garcia and the other guy that was there. What's the guy that the heavyweight fighter, the Rotan guy, Ruiz. You know,
Yeah.
he was down there with Canelo. I'm not sure if he's still there or not, but he went in with Canelo. Some of these guys, man, no matter
And
what.
Garcia was saying he wasn't getting enough attention or whatever.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
knows if that's true?
That
Yeah.
yeah, well, but I never thought a lot of Ruiz anyway. He did a great job, which tells you why I never thought much of Anthony Joshua. That's my point. In
Yeah.
the second fight, Garcia had made 15, 16, 17 million dollars. And he said, the hell with it. He bought him a Rolls Royce and a big truck and a G-Wagon and a new home, and that was it.
Yeah. He's like, I'm good.
I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm good.
Which is perfect, which is perfectly fine.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. Just don't honey dick everyone like Tyson Fury, and
I don't know what do you think
those
about
fights are gonna happen, huh?
Okay, what I told somebody that Fury would probably be Tyson. I mean, I'm Fury. That Wilder would possibly be Tyson's last fight. Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
And I still believe that. I still believe that. This guy doesn't want to train anymore, man. He talks a good game.
he's
He's
just phoning it in from now on. You're saying?
phones it in. I don't think he wants to fight. Now, if he's not willing to fight Anthony Joshua, man, let me tell you something. I don't know what to think of this guy. Because, I mean, I think he could beat Joshua, but maybe sometimes my brother George always told me this. He said, man, I could have boxed till I was 50. He said, but the problem was the training. I just don't.
Yeah.
And you have to go, when you stay out for a while, man, it's more than, especially for the big guys, it's more than a notion. You set a year off, 2 years or something like that, unless there's a big need for it. But when you've been on the road like that, and then all of a sudden you take off, you got plenty
his joints too have got to be going. Like if you're that big, that tall,
tall.
No way you can hold up for too long.
I said the only way he fights is they give him so much money that he's got to say, this is definitely it, or Wilder was his last fight.
Well, I mean, he's supposed to be doing fighting an MMA champ in Ngannou right now. I think that's 100% gone through. I'm not entirely sure, but that's probably what he was looking for, is like an easy payday.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
It takes something like that. It'll draw a lot of people on. It's not a real boxing match, and if he loses, what the hell? But if I beat this guy, then I can still talk on. But I'm gone. Maybe retire in Dubai somewhere. I don't know. Go to one of the Falkland Islands or hell, or somewhere he's going to go to. But I said the Wilder would be his last boxing match, and I'm sticking to that.
I think some people are like they're done boxing, right? But they're still addicted to the fame and to the attention. I'm not saying that's Fury, but like you see that with like Conor McGregor or whatever, where you could tell he doesn't really want to fight anymore, but his attention's going away. So fine, I'll do another fight, and they're not in it for the love of the sport, or even for their legacy, or even for more money. I think it's just like I'm used to 5,000, comments on my tweets every day. I'm used to 50,000 upvotes. Now I'm only getting 30,000 upvotes. What am I gonna do?
It's the adulation of the crowd, David.
Yes.
If you're hooked on that, that's where Ali hung around for way too long, because the adulation of the crowd. Ray Leonard, to a point, same way. You know, you have to realize sometimes that eventually the crowds are going to die down. And those that were for you, they start feeling sorry for you. And then the words become like, oh man, I think it's just, I think you need to retire. Oh, it's a sad thing what happens to you. But that adulation of hearing people, 10,000 people screaming your name in an arena, man, 15,000 saying, that's hard to overcome. And especially between fighters and wrestling guys have the same type of thing, even though I don't know what to think about that. But I mean, when you think about the combat guys, that's what they're used to, that crowd. And it's hard to give that in boxing more than any of the sports. You know yourself, when those guys get to this level, man, it's hard to walk away from that. And then
because
people
rock star status.
oh, the rock stars.
Walking in, the whole crowd cheers for you, and it's thousands and thousands of people.
My wife and I looked at an episode of it was a Barbra Streisand and Chris Christopherson movie. They remade it again a couple of years ago, but it's called A Star Is Born.
Okay.
Great movie. The soundtrack was fantastic. Barbra Streisand, beautiful voice. But Chris Christopherson plays this aged rock and roll singer. And I tell you, I think that movie reminds me more of a boxer that's no longer has it. He wants to, think he has it, but it's just not there anymore. And that's why I'm really kind of glad George came back, did his thing, and he won the way. And they offered him a whole lot more, a bunch of money, but he had made money beyond the ring and it made it possible for him to walk away. But he just like he came back on his own, he walked out on his own. And I think with very few fighters, they always think that they got that. I got this one more thing in me. I just want to see my name and lights one more time. And I know I can take this kid, and I think Tyson Fury, he likes that. And if that fight is taking place in Dubai, right? I think it's supposed to take place in Dubai. And what's the guy's name? I don't even know his name.
I don't know. Ngannou.
Ngannou. Okay, I don't say I don't fight. He's MMA, right?
Yeah. MMA. Yeah. Francis Ngannou. Like everyone wish he'd still hung around the UFC because now he'd be fighting John Jones probably, and now that fight probably won't ever happen. So everyone's just kind of more bummed about him fighting Tyson Fury than happy that he's going to be fighting. It's the exact opposite of the McGregor versus Mayweather scenario. Everyone's just kind of bummed about it.
He's going to make an ass pocket full of money fighting Tyson Fury, so I can't be mad at him for taking that.
No, that was one of his things. He's like, I'm heavyweight champ. I'm not getting paid enough. Look how much the boxers are getting paid, which is fair enough. Yeah,
fair enough. So I mean, but at the same time, if he decides to fight some more, that's great. If he beats the Tyson Fury, then he's got a legacy for sure. And then maybe come back to MMA. But if Tyson Fury beats him, he walks with a bunch of money. Tyson Fury walks with a bunch of money, and he says, "I have nothing else to prove. I'm beating everybody and everything." And and he'll officially make his announcement. I hope that he's retired.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Okay. All right. Before we finish this up, I
got two things. Can I do this?
Huh?
Okay, I got two things that I'm working on now, and one of the things I
wanted to mention your book.
Okay, I want to do that, but I've got involved with this teen cancer thing now.
Okay,
and we have a very big outbreak. I don't know if people can really see that. I hope they can.
Yeah, they can see it now. Yeah.
Okay, teen cancer.
Teen cancer in America.
There's a very big outbreak of that now. I've always been over the years
from teenagers.
Teenagers, yes.
That's insane.
I know, right? Then they don't know. They don't know. A lot of them see, you got all kind of things. Is it the radiation from the video games, the headphone sets, or what I tell? All of them have.
Well, probably not that, but who the hell knows? Something's doing
it. Something's going on. So but there's a big increase. And I've always been actively inactive with the Shriners Hospital for years. And if people follow them, they do an awful lot of work, them and St. Jude's as well. So I've been involved with that now. And so that's become one of my biggest pushes. And one of the things and that's why in doing the book, to segue into that, that book is out, as you know, and the book is done in 4 parts. It's a legacy, it's more of a history of my family leading up to George, because there's so many stories that people just don't know. Everybody knows about how George's story ends, but there's the beginning of this. It goes all the way back to my grandfather and my grandmother. It's
And
called,
that's
and
that's the first one. Yeah.
that's the first one, and the story begins. And so there's a pivotal point that takes place in that book.
Mhm.
And people will say, hopefully, they say, "Oh, hurry up, it's part two." But
Mhm.
it's pretty good. But hopefully, and it's available on Amazon, Kindle,
Yeah.
and both hardback.
Yeah. Yeah. I put it out a community post for you, and people in the comments seemed really, really interested
Well, I
about
hope
the
they.
about the idea. I said, if you enjoy Roy's stories on this podcast, then this is, check that out.
Yeah,
So you're saying that this is going to benefit the teen cancer.
I'm going to be. Yes,
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And so those are the two things you wanted to mention?
yes, those are the two things I want to mention.
Okay,
And I'm
cool.
picking
So,
Crawford. I'm picking Crawford with the victory. Now I'm going to say it this time. I hadn't said it, but I'm picking Crawford.
okay, cool. We'll put those links down below, and everyone have a terrific day.